in. I'm not about that. All of a sudden, he's strong on immigration. But anyway, let's go on with these numbers here. You're listening to the Silent Majority. The number to call is 347-338-1775. You really took a lot of time in doing this. Explain these numbers and tell people where they can go. Go on his, if you guys want to go on his Twitter right now, it's Victor, Breaux. How do you pronounce your last name, Victor?
It's actually Breaux. I heard you say it earlier wrong.
Bro?
I wasn't going to correct you, though.
Breaux. Okay, so it's easy. It's like, bro, you're my bro.
Yeah.
Okay, look, it's pinned to the top. Yeah. Let's talk about these numbers here with my co-host, actually, who's Magellan. I'm sorry, Magellan. I'll let you ask a question in a second, but let's go over these numbers here.
All right, so look, I've been looking for these numbers probably since the beginning, the very first primary election. I was interested in seeing, because you're seeing Romney's presence. You're seeing him speak. You're seeing him actually get engaged in these primaries. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of just, it keeps begging the question, so how is Trump stacking up against that man Romney? And what's well, when I did my research, there was no numbers to be found. I mean, nobody is putting these numbers together in the way that to see actual numbers and a real progression. And if they do anything close to it, it's actually kind of skewed, and it's only part of the equation. And it just, I wasn't looking to try to prove, oh, Trump has so much more support, or, oh, Romney had this or that. I wasn't trying to prove for a candidate. Obviously, I'm a pro-Trump candidate. Mm-hmm. Trump is my candidate of choice. But that's not what I was looking for. I wanted an actual comparison. How's Trump doing at this point in the election, in the primary, compared to Romney back in 2002? And I couldn't find the data. So I sat down, and when I say it took hours, Chris, I mean, it took hours.
I believe it. I had
to pull together a lot of information, a lot of numbers. And ultimately what I did, just the formula is very simple, very straightforward. Any state so far in the 2016 primary that has voted in the primary, any state so far, I wrote down those states, and then I backtracked all the way back to 2012. And I wrote the actual number of popular votes and delegates gained. Now, coincidentally, the number of delegates needed in 2012 is different from the number of delegates needed in 2016. So I thought to myself, well, without getting into the weeds, I'm going to try to simplify it really fast. You can't really go off the delegate count, although Trump is doing very well and better, even with these delegates. Right. You have to go off of a percentage. How far up, how much progress in this campaign, in this primary, has Trump made compared to the same amount of progress, percentage-wise, that Romney made? And when I started plugging in these numbers, the popular vote is what really stood out to me. So at this point, with all the states that have actually voted in the 2016 primary, compare that to those same exact states in the 2012 primary. Romney was around 5,700,000 plus votes. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump at this point is at 7.5 million votes. So he's up 24% currently. Now, I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I want to see where was Romney before, who all was competing with Romney at this point, because Donald Trump has had, from the beginning, I mean, the guy had 17 candidates running against him, and even now he still has two very prominent candidates against him, one that is probably sneaking his way into the convention, right. That may end up getting some sort of nomination, schemingly handed him a nomination.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second.
And then you have another guy, Ted Cruz, who does have a lot of popular support. Ted Cruz, it's not nearly enough to win the nomination, much less the general, but he has a lot of popular support. So Donald Trump has that to reckon with right now. So I looked back in the primary of 2012, and I saw several of these same states that had voted up until this point. Well, Romney had no competition in. By that time, Santorum had already dropped out, and many others had dropped out. Romney was literally the only one going into many of these primaries. And I said, wait a minute, well, that's definitely not fair. So I totally negated every one of those states, which there was 4 total, by the way. Texas, North Carolina, Kentucky, and Arkansas are all states that when Romney went into, he basically had no real competition in any of those states. All the delegates, no matter if it was a state that was winner take all or not, all the delegates went to Romney regardless. So I took that out of the equation because I just thought that wasn't a fair analysis by any means and by any measure, because Romney had no competition. Right. Now think about this. Even with that competition, even with those states where Romney had no competition, those 4 states, Donald Trump is still warranting 2 million more votes.
Is that so?
And
So
you
he's
think
so
four
he's
out of all of those states.
so Mitt Romney's doing a lot worse than you might expect from these numbers.
A lot worse.
Yeah, because like you said, he had no competition.
None at all. Now, whenever you actually, what I did was a total adjusted comparison. Is basically just subtracted all the unchallenged states, basically where the front runner had no challenges. Like he had nobody on the side of his ticket with him. All the delegates, all the votes, basically were just they would go to him automatically. I took away those 4 states, and the actual comparison where they had competition, so people got a choice. Hey, do I choose Romney or do I choose Santorum? And in this election, hey, do I choose Trump or do I choose Cruz?
Right.
We're looking at one of the biggest increases. Now, before I give you that total percentage increase, something that really, really interests me is the total primary turnout. Now, up until this point in 2012, the total primary turnout, all candidates combined in 2012 was almost 11 million. It was 10.7.
Right.
Almost 11 million. At this stage in the 2016 total primary, and total primary turnout is 18.7. So it's up 43% as of the whenever you include the states that have actually voted, up 43%. And you subtract, and by the way, I'm still subtracting those unchallenged states. So that's a huge margin. So it's up 43% in the total primary. I'm trying not to get in the weeds here, of course, Chris, but it's up 43% in the total primary. Well, whenever you subtract those states where there was no one challenging Mitt Romney, and you just look at the actual popular votes, Donald Trump is up 37%.
Right.
So it goes from 3.8 to 6.1. Donald Trump is up 37%, leaving only 5% of the electorate. 5% of the electorate uncounted for. So that is some of the most telling numbers that the turnout increase in this primary is absolutely 100% due to positive votes for Trump, the check mark next to his name.
Right.
And that's something that you can't find anywhere on the internet. You just can't find it without getting totally in the weeds.
Right.
And of course, the chart explains it in a lot better way and a more simpler way than what I'm explaining right now.
Right. Right. You listen to the Silent Majority here on New Media Patriot Radio. The number to call is 338-347-338-1775. Magellan is my co-host for the night. Magellan, you have a question for Victor regarding these numbers?
Well, just a comment and then a question. Not only did Romney not have as much challenge or challengers in some of those states, but he didn't have the extreme opposition from all corners, from the mainstream media, from the establishment, everywhere else. And despite all that Trump has had to endure, it seems to me, and I want to get your take on this, but it seems to me that the more that people oppose him, the more that he seems to do better. I mean, take, for example, Florida. Millions of dollars of advertising against him in Florida. I mean, he just knocked it out of the ballpark in Florida. I mean, look what happened in Chicago, and we talked about this, today, what happened in Chicago. Did extraordinarily well in Illinois. And so even though we get frustrated when we see the kind of opposition that Trump is facing, do you feel as well that it actually benefits him in the long run at the polls?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
Because they want to see authenticity, and it really, I think, does that for Trump. Well, what say you?
Yeah. Well, I think the challenging, whenever you see this intense challenge against Trump, and you know what? This is a primary season. All is fair, right? This is a fair time. This is whenever all the claws need to come out. This exposes the candidates for who they are. I feel like I would probably, if it weren't for Trump, I'd probably be a Cruz supporter. But because of Trump exposing and drawing out the claws, I actually got to see a part of Cruz that I don't feel comfortable with. And so that's why I'm not a Cruz supporter. And otherwise I would be. So this is a primary season. These challenges, these throws, and the mudslinging is a good thing up until a certain point. Mm-hmm. And I think we are teetering on that certain point at this moment in the primary right now, where it gets dangerous now. Right. It's beginning to get dangerous. Right. But it absolutely does help Trump. Every time they come out against him, every time they pressure him, every time they come up. If you look in the Chicago things, I mean, he won that state handedly. Won it handedly. Look at the millions and millions of dollars that the establishment spent in Florida.
Right.
And he won it handedly. And I'm going to predict Arizona is going to be the same way because of all the, closing down of the streets. If I'm an unbiased, just driving on a highway and I'm just driving around, maybe go and see my aunt or something, over there in Arizona, and the streets are blocked for several hours because some people don't want other people who are driving next to me to go to a Trump rally. Do you know that would probably make me go vote for the guy?
Yeah.
That would probably cause me, because I'm so furious at this point.
Exactly.
I'm furious at this point. It became real. It became real to
exactly.
me.
Before I move on
they're so desperate.
Hold on one second. Let me just reset here. Before I move on to my next topic there, I just want to say, Florida, Magellan mentioned Florida. Florida was basically a microcosm, a predictive microcosm of what's going to happen going forward, in that, Florida is a place where you have a lot of transplants from all over the country. And Donald Trump won that by a landslide. So, if that's any
very good point.
That's basically a perfect example of how, Donald Trump can basically reach across all different, areas and walks of life. He can get the Reagan Democrats. He can get the fed up Democrats that are fed up with what the Democrats have done or not done for them. And I think that's one thing that will hinder Ted Cruz in a general election, is the fact that he cannot do that. He cannot reach across the aisle. He is too quote unquote radical in the sense with his religion and stuff like that. And as you can see, that's why he lost South Carolina with the evangelicals, because, he has that nut guy, Glenn Beck, traveling with him, spewing all this, over the top religious, rhetoric. But, I have my next guest on the line. Before I let you go, Victor, let's talk about, today you recently had, today we had another delegate from Nevada who basically said people are under the misconception that it is the result of the caucus. It is the results of the caucus and the results of the primary that determine who becomes the nominee. It is actually the delegates that are at the national convention that are supposed to pick the nominee. Basically, her comments nearly mirrored last Wednesday's remarks by the North Dakotan Curly Huglin, who basically said that it's not the people that select the nominee, it is the delegates, and basically and the committee that makes the rules for said convention. So why are we doing all this if that's the case? Why are we going through all this if ultimately you're going to have a couple of delegates who are basically, are going to be making the rules committee, which are basically going to be making, established rule committee members that are basically going to be making the rules as to who's going to get the nomination?
Chris, when I heard that, all I heard was, you know what, we're going to stifle your voice on a technicality. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how they arrange the words, but I just kept hearing a technicality. That is going to, when I said we're teetering on the that edge right now in the primary season where unity has to begin in order for us to defeat the ultimate goal, right, to achieve the ultimate goal and defeat the ultimate enemy, I mean that this movement Ted Cruz has started, the Never Trump movement, and it's not really a movement. It's just enough. He's an obstructionist. I was listening to an old college buddy of Ted Cruz, and, you can't really hold this against the guy because I like Cruz's policy, right, but I do not like Cruz, and he doesn't seem trustworthy or genuine to me. But I was listening to him talk about his old college roommate, Ted Cruz, and he said he was an obstructionist. Every time he spoke, he was just combative. He was argumentative. He would argue to argue. Right. He loved to argue. He loved to debate. And you know what? I see that reflected in this primary. If Ted Cruz does not wise up, it's not only going to be to his demise as trying to achieve the presidential nomination, but it's going to be to the entire Republican Party's demise if Ted Cruz does not end the Never Trump movement. If he does not end it himself, it can't come from anyone else. Yep. It has to come from Ted Cruz. If there is not a unity ticket that is not meant to just destroy the populist vote, mm-hmm, which is what they're talking about right now, right, the Kasich and Cruz ticket. If there's not an actual unity ticket of the populist vote, this party is ended. And you won't see an immediate effect, in my opinion. I've been watching this for a long, long time, many elections, and I'm a Ron Paul fan, so I'll watch some of the same things happen to Ron Paul back in the day. I'm seeing this all over again. But
quickly,
the difference between them now,
that one Ron Paul rule is actually They're going to change that where you needed 8 states in order to even be part of the brokered convention, eligible for the brokered convention. They made that rule back in 2012, where that's how they screwed Ron Paul, where he wasn't going to be able to be part of the brokered convention. But listen, we got to